historic breakthrough for France's far right prompts hundreds to take the streets of Paris in protest. From cheap EVs to now steel, China faces more accusations of dumping. Vanishing with the wind, coastal sand dunes are disappearing across the country. Plus, a local school faces an unusual problem, having to turn away students as other schools see enrollment numbers plummet. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Liao. In breaking news, a man has driven a car into the barricade outside the presidential office in Taipei. The car was covered in graffiti that seemed to say SOS National Cognitive Warfare. An office spokesperson says that the driver has been handed over to the police for questioning. This is a breaking story, and we will keep you updated on further developments. France has wrapped up the first round of its legislative elections, and exit polls are pointing toward a historic win for the far right. The results are a blow to incumbent President Emmanuel Macron and come right after a far-right win in the EU elections last month. Joyce Sun has more on the situation in Paris.
Cheers from France's far right as the anti-immigrant National Rally Party, or RN, makes landmark gains to win the first round of parliamentary elections. Though stopping short of a majority, the party's leader, Jordan Bardella, doubled down on his pledge to aim for Parliament's top seat in the second round.
J'entends être un Premier ministre de cohabitation, respectueux de la Constitution et de la fonction du président de la République, mais intransigeant sur la politique que nous mettrons en œuvre au service de la France et au service des Français.
Saying the left has sent France into decline, RN supporters say this is a turning point for the country.
Il faut essayer le changement parce que on a essayé la droite, on a essayé la gauche, et là il faut faire un renouveau et il est grand temps.
À la faute des différents gouvernements, c'est pas que ce gouvernement-là. Tous les gouvernements précédents ont laissé tomber notre pays. Et maintenant, il est temps qu'on redresse notre pays, tout simplement. Et je crois au RN pour cela.
Exit polls on Sunday placed the RN in first, winning around 34% of the vote. Historic gains for the party. Newly established left-wing coalition, the New Popular Front, took 28%, while President Emmanuel Macron's Ensemble alliance came third with 20%. In a shock decision, Macron called the snap election last month after the RN beat his party in the European Parliament elections, saying he couldn't resign himself to the rise of far-right parties across the continent. With Macron's gamble possibly backfiring, protesters in Paris are calling to keep the RN from power.
Parce qu'il faut se battre, parce que je viens d'avoir un enfant il y a 3 mois et j'ai pas du tout envie pour elle qu'elle vive dans ce monde, qu'elle vive dans un monde avec un gouvernement pareil, avec un gouvernement au pouvoir qui ne respecte ni les minorités, qui est intolérant, qui se prétend être un gouvernement qui va respecter tout, qui va respecter les valeurs de la République, et on n'y croit pas.
Leftist politicians are keeping hopes alive. With the second round of voting set for July 7th, Green Party leader Marine Tondelier says a victory for the left-wing coalition is still possible.
Un front contre le climato-scepticisme. Un front contre la haine, contre l'intolérance, contre la violence, contre la stigmatisation, contre la ségrégation.
Macron has also called for a broad alliance against the far right, as the RN will aim to win an absolute majority. If they do, it'd be the first time since World War II that a right-wing party takes power in France, and would also position the president and prime minister as rivals, a first for the country in 2 decades. Howard Zhang and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
The win by the National Rally in the first round of France's parliamentary elections cast a spotlight on the rise of the far right across Europe. Louise Watt has more.
Protests in Paris instead of celebration after the far right won the most votes in the first round of French parliamentary elections. Polls suggest Marine Le Pen's National Rally could win a majority for the first time and form France's first far-right government since it was occupied by Nazi Germany during World War II. It's a scenario that's alarming many ahead of the final runoff on July the 7th.
Le RN n'est même pas encore passé au pouvoir entièrement, qu'il y a du racisme x 40, qu'il y a des agressions x 40.
C'est un climat qui va se tendre, je pense.
The National Rally has promised to drastically cut illegal and legal immigration.
Nous ne faisons rien. Nos nations seront livrées à une submersion migratoire d'une ampleur jamais atteinte dans l'histoire.
The National Rally's historically high showing in the first round follows its success in European Parliament elections, where it won more seats than President Emmanuel Macron's party. And it's not just in France where the far right is making gains. Across Europe, there's a shift to the populist and radical right.
Aki a migrációt támogatja, az a terrorizmus is támogatja. Mi ellenezzük a terrorizmust, ezért nem támogatjuk a migrációt sem.
E acredito que os nossos filhos, os nossos sobrinhos, os nossos netos nos vão agradecer por esta luta histórica que tivemos pela liberdade, pela dignidade e pela nossa identidade.
The far right's increasing success in the polls comes as thousands of migrants continue to make the perilous journey to Europe. Last year, the European Union saw more than 1 million people apply for asylum, the highest number since 2016. Most want to go to Germany.
Wir wissen, die Europäische Union braucht Migration. Deutschland braucht Zuwanderung, um seinen großen Bedarf an Arbeitskräften zu decken, der in den nächsten Jahren akut ist.
But back in France, the National Rally's very different message on immigration is resonating with voters.
Effectivement, mais peut-être remettre un petit peu les choses en place avec des gens qui sont chez nous et qui n'arrivent pas à s'adapter effectivement donc à notre pays.
Vous séduit. On a essayé tous les côtés et ça va pas, donc après pourquoi pas essayer le Rassemblement national.
The National Rally hopes to win an absolute majority. While that may not happen, it's still poised to become the largest force in French politics. But the party and those across Europe that have been buoyed by a surge in anti-immigration sentiment will still need to grapple with official projections that by 2030 the EU will need millions more workers to help keep its economies going, many of whom will likely need to come from outside its borders. Klein Wong and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Celebrations are underway in Hong Kong as the city marks 27 years since its handover from the UK to China. In a statement, Chief Executive John Lee lauded the newly implemented Article 23 security law, which enshrines a Beijing-imposed national security law into Hong Kong's own basic law. China joined in on the celebrations, announcing travel permits for Hong Kong's non-Chinese permanent residents to visit the mainland and a gift of 2 giant pandas for the city. Following the handover in 1997, Hong Kong was promised to have 50 years of political and economic autonomy under a one-country, two-systems rule. But the city looks markedly different this year as an expanded national security law stifles opposition voices. To learn more about how Hong Kong's changed since the handover, our reporter Tiffany Wong spoke with Terrence Law, a Hong Kong activist in exile living in Taiwan.
Can you describe what kind of activities would happen on the anniversary of the handover in Hong Kong?
Usually after the handover in 1997, we got a rally, a demonstration on the Hong Kong island. Actually, after I'm 12 years old, my parents always took me into the rally every year. However, this kind of rally already disappeared because of the NSL and the highly oppression by the Hong Kong government. I would say after national security law and Article 23, local Hong Kongers already feel some kind of nostalgia, actually. Like their Hong Kong experience before the 2019 is already gone.
Now, you were born after the handover happened, so you've always been living under Chinese Hong Kong. Now, have you noticed any generational differences when you speak with older people?
The generation gap is bigger than all of us imagined. Usually, the elder generation, the elderly, usually they still believed it in the one country, two system. But like the younger generation, especially our generations, or we call it a localist generation, we usually don't believe in the one country, two system anymore. I think all of us noticed that the promises given by the Chinese government are already broken. They originally promised us that the one country, two system can let Hong Kongers rule Hong Kong. However, we cannot elect our own president or legislator. And we have no more freedom of speech, freedom of rallies, etc. To the repression and the oppression, the whole civil society is already dead.
You said that Hong Kong civil society is dead. So does it exist anywhere else outside of Hong Kong?
Even though the original local civil society of Hong Kong is dead, but it's also alive in a subtle way. The political industry is dead, for sure, but the cultural industry is still alive and getting more and more and developing very well. It would become a very important base of future democratic movement of Hong Kong. And of course, exile or diaspora democratic movement are still going on, for example, myself as an example.
That was our reporter Tiffany Wong speaking with Hong Kong activist Terrence Law. South Korea says North Korea launched 2 short-range ballistic missiles in the early hours of Monday. The South Korean military says one of the missiles may have failed and blown up, crashing inland. It says the other missile landed in North Korean waters. It's the second such launch in 5 days. The test comes just 2 days after the end of trilateral military exercises between the U.S., South Korea, and Japan. President Liao has praised 3 submariners killed in an accident last year and offered condolences to their families. That came during a memorial service on Sunday. A sudden wave swept the 3 from the deck of their submarine last December as they were trying to recover a rescue buoy that had become detached. The Navy did not issue any punishments over the accident, saying environmental factors and equipment failures were to blame. A growing number of countries, including Taiwan, are concerned by China's overproduction of cheap steel. Now, Taiwan's leading steelmaker is seeking anti-dumping action. John Van Trieste has this report.
Faced with dwindling demand at home, China's massive steel sector is looking abroad. But an influx of Chinese steel has come with backlash, with India and Mexico introducing tariffs. The United States, Thailand, and Brazil could follow them. Now, Taiwan's joining the list of countries feeling the pressure from cheaper Chinese competition. Taiwan's biggest steelmaker, CSC, says it's gathering evidence of dumping. And while the Economy Ministry has promised to respect WTO rules, it says it and other agencies will act if there are signs China has engaged in unfair practices.
受到国际不公平竞争受到实质损害的话，可以协助他们提出反倾销的控诉。财政部是负责调查这倾销的行为，经济部负责调查是不是受到实质损害。真的受到损害的话，我们就会依照法令来课征反倾销税。
But tariffs or not, China remains the world's biggest steel producer, offering attractive prices. Economists say that to compete, Taiwan needs to better market its steel.
政策上面应该思考如何走出台湾自己的特色，譬如说有没有减碳的一个钢材，当做一个绿色产品发展的一个趋势，可以高质化产品差异的一个策略走向，跟中国大陆一些产品做一些区隔。
Economists say it's important for firms to work closer with the government to counter dumping, but also to look beyond the current Chinese glut so Taiwan steel is competitive even in the future. Leon Lin and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, rainbows descend on New York City as hundreds of thousands turn out to celebrate Pride Month. Stay tuned.
I want competition with China, not conflict.
The entire world has great interest in keeping Taiwan's chip industry functional.
So the silicon shield that supposedly has been protecting Taiwan.
How many years the TSMC can still maintain its competitive edge?
What do you see as the next big shift in the semiconductor industry?
Taiwan's take on global headlines. All that matters, TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. Taiwan has said goodbye to its 3G mobile network after it was turned off on Sunday. Roughly 530,000 mobile users still need to upgrade to 4G or 5G connections, according to the Communications Commission. Eliminating the slower 3G network is expected to save 280 million kilowatt hours of power a year. Taiwan's shrinking population means many schools are struggling to stay open. But that's not the whole picture. As John Van Trist reports, schools with good reputations are getting more applicants than they can handle.
Zhangxing Junior High School is in an unusual position. As other nearby schools see enrollment shrink, Zhangxing's prestige has parents competing to get their kids in. This year, it's had to turn away 168 students who would otherwise qualify. The Zheng siblings' parents are among those who'd pinned their hopes on the school, but the two children haven't gotten in. Their relatives say, unlike some families who move their family registry to a different school district to get kids into good schools, they are bona fide locals.
随便想应该都知道说很多人都是寄户的啊，但是我们是在地，就是出生就在住在这边的。
This year's entering class is definitely out of the ordinary. For one thing, it's bigger than normal. All these kids were born in the Year of the Dragon, a Chinese zodiac year thought to be good for having children. But also, Zhangxing's principal says their exam scores have been above average.
彰兴国中今年的会考成绩比往年都要更好。我们如果依照去年的录取标准，彰中、彰理，我们今年是破200个。
But since 2021, local officials have been trying to stop this type of crowding by spreading resources around so that children in more rural areas can get a decent education. They've restricted enrollments in 15 schools around Zhanghua County. Still, parents are determined to squeeze their kids into schools they think offer the best, leaving officials with the tricky task of keeping the rest of the local schools on an equal footing. Scott Huang and John Van Trieste for Taiwan Plus.
The mercury has hit 41 degrees Celsius in Taitung, the hottest temperature in the country so far this year. The mountainous eastern region is prone to hot winds that gust downhill into valleys in the summer. But other parts of Taiwan have seen temperatures approaching 40 degrees too. The Central Weather Administration says the extreme heat may last until Saturday, but even then, much of the country can expect temperatures to stay in the mid-30s. Coastal sand dunes are not just a pretty sight. They're fundamental to preventing coastal erosion. But Taiwan's sand dunes are in danger, and the effects of erosion are being seen across the country. Chris Gorin has the story.
Sand dunes. Shaped by the wind and tide, they're a rare sight in Taiwan, where most beaches are covered in pebbles or rocks. This 8-kilometer stretch of dunes is the longest in the country, reaching heights of 21 meters, and the area became a designated geopark in 2020. But dunes like these may not be around for long.
它现在随着这个气候变迁呐，海水面的上升呢，其实如果你没有让沙丘自然的往内陆这个方向来移动，来形成新的沙丘的话，那可能这个沙丘在不久的将来也会慢慢的消失掉。
Sand dunes are an effective, nature-based solution to coastal erosion, an issue that is affecting communities worldwide. That's why Professor Zhong Yilin wants locals to know more about what these dunes have to offer.
There's no doubt that this area, sometimes called the Sahara of Taiwan, makes a great backdrop for a photo. But it also protects the land in ways that man-made structures simply can't. And that's just one of the many reasons environmentalists say they need to be protected.
In many areas, hard structures such as seawalls or concrete blocks are used to keep the ocean at bay. These now make up more than half of Taiwan's coastline. But hard structures simply reflect the energy from waves, diverting it and speeding up erosion downshore. On the other hand, coastal dunes absorb wave energy while also creating a barrier from ever-encroaching seas.
台湾周遭海平面上升0.5公尺到很极端的1.2公尺，就是我们包含台北或高雄，比它就在海边，或台南就在海边，海边的相邻的这些位置的影响会比较大。
The consequences of erosion and sea level rise can be seen all over the island. Swallowed beaches, destroyed forests, coastal structures overtaken by the sea or covered by sand, eroded dumps exposing decades of buried trash. and even flooding in the cities. To continue to protect against all that, natural structures like dunes need the right conditions to survive. But now they face competition. The same winds that shape the dunes also power wind turbines, built directly on top of them. Every year, sand is cleared for cables and access roads to the turbines, which scientists say are at odds with natural processes.
那这个就有点我们讲说有点本末倒置。这沙丘本来就在这里，风本来就在这里走，就在这里吹。可是现在它变成反过来要求，这个政府要把沙子挡住，要把风挡住。
Sensitive areas like these sand dunes are caught between progress and preservation. And scientists warn that if they're not protected, they could vanish, along with the coastlines they're protecting. Chris Ma and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Documentary makers from Taiwan and Japan are collaborating on a project on one of Taiwan's most popular attractions, Alishan. Harel Hughes tells us more.
A journey into one of Taiwan's most popular sites, the Forest of Alishan. This train line has existed for over a century, built to transport lumber during Japan's occupation of Taiwan. It's now a passenger train and considered one of the most beautiful mountain railways in the world. Over the years, floods and landslides have left parts of the line damaged and closed off. But after 15 years of restoration, the full rail line is finally reopening.
这个蒸汽车修复的同事，靠着我们去找资料的力量，去把它整合文字，跟让有图片，用留下中文文字可以做传承的模式。这一段真的是有一点骨头了。
A documentary crew from Taiwan Public Television Service, the parent organization of TaiwanPlus, and Japan's NHK collaborated to film the restoration, along with the scenery of Alishan and its cultural significance. They used ultra-high 8K video quality to capture the area's natural beauty, set to an orchestra soundtrack with narration by Taiwanese actress Gui Lunmei.
这条铁道是阿里山的命脉，穿梭纵横在起伏的山峦之间。
It's a project the producers say is invaluable to Taiwan's culture and history.
业的铁道文化，它是台湾一个非常非常重要的文化資產。
記録として残す際に、やはり当時の私たちが見たそのままを記録し残していけるっていうのが一つ大きなメリットになります。
The documentary premiered at Chiang Kai-shek Memorial in Taipei, aiming to share the beauty and significance of Alishan with the world. Devin Tsai and Harel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
To cap off Pride Month this year, hundreds of thousands of people gathered in New York City, where the first Pride Parade was held 50 years ago. It has since become a platform to advocate for LGBTQ+ rights across the world. Irene Lin reports.
Ending Pride Month on a high note. People traveled from near and far to celebrate LGBTQ+ freedom and equality in the place where it all started, New York City.
I think it's really fun as a community to be able to express our individuality, but together as a group. And I'm really excited to see all the fun floats and everything today.
Among the crowds at this year's New York Pride, Taiwan had a special contingent, led by Taiwanese drag queen Nymphia Wind, the latest winner of RuPaul's Drag Race. She says representing Taiwan in the event in New York is a monumental moment for her.
I'm very excited because this is my first ever New York Pride, and I'm walking with Taiwan.
The Big Apple is the birthplace of Pride, but the colorful, joyous event seen today didn't come easy. It started when patrons of a local gay bar fought back against a police raid in 1969, one in a long series of raids. The violent confrontation lasted multiple days and became known as the Stonewall Riots. Marchers say they're here to commemorate the people who took part in those protests and spawned the LGBTQ+ rights movement.
We've really come a long way. I still think, though, there's a lot of discrimination in a lot of different places, and I still feel that we're still hated in some way. But today we have to be here to celebrate that liberation that our Stonewall veterans succeeded for us.
Since the first parade in 1970, the event has morphed into a platform for diverse civil rights and social justice causes. Crossover between LGBTQ+ and issues like indigenous land justice and Palestinian liberation could be seen throughout the march. Politicians were also there to voice their support for equality and freedom of speech.
Happy Pride, everybody!
For some international attendees, the atmosphere gave them hope that the rights and safety of their communities would also be protected back at home, as the far-right and anti-LGBTQ+ forces gain power in some of their countries.
Ouais, exactement, sur cette place, on était venu il y a 2 ans ici justement, et pour nous c'était important de revenir, surtout quand on fait le lien en ce moment avec ce qui se passe en France. La tolérance est important, et c'est un combat de tous les jours en fait, et on veut le mener, y compris ici aux États-Unis.
With a growing number and diversity of voices speaking out and marching together, there is hope that New York Pride can bring more awareness to issues impacting marginalized groups, all while staying the same fun celebration that draws out massive crowds each year. James Lin and Irene Lin for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally today, check out these people taking to the water at the Cross Penghu Bay event. This year, stand-up paddlers were allowed to take part for the first time. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.